We're halfway through our countdown of the best board games of all time. So today, it's number 31 to 20.
Hi, I'm Libby, this is Julian, and together we are BoxedMeeples. And yes, this is the halfway video of our top 50 games of all time. So if you have missed either the 50s or the 40s, do go check those out and get yourself up to speed with where we are and what games we've already mentioned, so that when you comment, you'll know which ones we've already said or not.
So again, I'm going to pick 10 board games. Libby's picked 10 board games. They might be the same, there might be some overlaps, or they might be entirely different.
They might be.
But if we talk about some games that you're interested in, a good place to buy them would be your friendly local game store. And our friendly local game store is Chaos Cards right here in the southeast of England. But don't worry if you're not nearby, because they have a fantastic website. And if you use the code in the description, you'll save some money at the checkout.
Will indeed. Of course, if you like what you're seeing, do please consider subscribing if you're not already, liking, and as I said earlier, comment to the videos. We do really enjoy hearing what you have to say. But yeah, let's get into our list, shall we, with number 30. Who's starting?
Not starting. We can start.
Ah, excellent. So my number 30 is quite a big hitter. And I did wonder about the number for a little bit. It spent quite a lot of 2023 out there at number 1 on the BGG listings. And it's a game I really do enjoy, but I think to come up in the rankings, I need to play it a little bit more than I have. I've owned it for quite a little while.
Yeah.
And we have both played it, but never
We've never played a game together. No, it's weird that.
So I've never played it at a lower player count. I've always played it sort of a 4, I think. But I really enjoy kind of getting that puzzle together with how you're making your routes. I like how it changes from one era to the next. You start with the canals and you're connecting those routes there, and then you move on to the trains. And all the time you're trying to sort of make sure that you've got enough stuff to carry out the routes that you want, but you also want people to use your resources in order that you get those benefits, but then not the resources you don't want them to use. Like often the beer is quite key in this one. You know, you definitely put it there because you wanted to have it, you wanted to use it, and when someone goes in and swoops up that booze, it can be quite a fun moment in the game, thinking, I've saved that, I have plans for that. But yeah, quite a fun puzzle to work out, you know, how to get the most connections around different areas and try and get those different bonuses that you need. A game that I really enjoy and I'd like to play more of.
Yeah, it's a certainly classy game. And there was me thinking the best thing to come out of Birmingham was the UK Games Expo. My number 30 is Dwellings of Eldervale. It's part worker placement, it's part deck building, it's part area control, lots of fun, and those miniatures. We can't not talk about the amazing monster miniatures that ours make noise when they
do. I'm just surprised at the 30.
Yeah, I think it was a lot higher on last year's. I think it's a case of, like so many of these games, if we haven't played it recently, it doesn't necessarily register in our brain as how good it is. I remember having a fantastic time every time we have played it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just haven't played it recently, so therefore I kind of forgotten how great it is, perhaps. I do like the way, you know, you're trying to make those difficult decisions about where to place your workers, and it's such a great production that we have. You know, it's quick to table with those, you know, your entire faction in a little box you just lay out. Obviously the play space is variable with the different hexes each time and the locations of certain things, although you can largely know what's going to come out. The orientation and where they are changes each game, and there's a lot of factions to choose from. So you've got 16 different factions.
Yeah, they're double-sided, the trays, and
each one of those is marginally different in what your upgraded workers can do, and each have their own kind of monster. I love the monsters explore on the board, because not only do they look great, but they change the gameplay as well, and it's even better when you can somehow take control of them and add them to your...
Love that bit.
What's good is it's doing all these things. Obviously you're trying to build up your hand, you're trying to upgrade which different dwellings you've got, which ultimately can win you the game. You're trying to go up the various magic tracks. So having the combat in there, you'd think, oh, that's just a step too far perhaps, but it's such a streamlined, simple combat that It sounds like it should be entirely random. You're just rolling a dice, whoever has the highest number wins. But obviously the amount of dice you commit to it and the amount of workers you send into there greatly affects which battle you're going to succeed in, because obviously it's not just the highest dice, it's the highest unique dice. So you might actually theoretically win it on like a 4 if you've been tied for 6s and 5s. And when you get lots of people involved in a combat, that's when it gets really exciting. And when you then can't move around the board because you've been blocked in to a certain extent, that's also very exciting. So yeah, it's a good combination of lots of mechanisms that I do enjoy fused into one beautiful game which has fantastic table friends and is quick to set up. I don't know why it's number 30.
No, me either, and I'm gonna not say too much. Wonder why. Next up for me, I absolutely adore this theme. In Dracarion, you are going out and trying to do everything that a magician would do. You're gathering up your tools and your background, and you're putting on this show that is your magic extraordinary presence that is going to be. And I really love how that sort of theme works in all of this. You've got to gather all the different bits and bobs in different spaces. I love how there's loads of unique tricks for you to be able to perform. There's lots of specialists and things. You're kind of selecting what actions you're going to be doing each turn, but it does make sense into you can't do this without having, you can't go out and perform magic unless you've got all the stuff. You've got to learn the trick, you've got to buy the resources for it, you've got to, everything like that makes sense in the journey that you've got to take to gather everything that you need, and then get yourself to that theatre and perform and hope that your trick is going to impress the crowd and get you the prestige that you need. It's just a lovely sort of Euro-y style game with a theme that's fantastic, and it's got some really crunchy decisions, so really enjoy that one.
Yeah, it's nice. It's got a theme that's unusual. Obviously, if you've seen the film The Prestige, you know exactly what this is all about. Boop. I love the game Boop. Cats bouncing on a bed. So easy to explain to people. It just clicks with someone after a few turns. And then they start working out the tactics and the strategies. Now, I never used to really like these kind of two-player dueling games, but Boop was really a turning point for me.
Yeah, you didn't stop playing it all of last summer.
Yes.
It was a bit of an obsession.
I couldn't get enough of it. I took it everywhere. I took it. I've talked about it in the past. I played it on a boat. I played it by the pool. I played it in restaurants and bars. Literally, I had it in my bag the whole time.
The whole summer.
And every time there's an opportunity to play it, I was getting out Boop. It's such a sweet game, but there's so much to think about. And I've had actually a game that lasted sort of 40 minutes of sort of two Boop-like chess grandmasters dueling it out on the field of the bouncing bed, just to kind of wait for someone to ultimately make that mistake, miss that strategic point that the other player's been watching and praying that you don't notice, and then swooping in and getting your 3 cats in a line. And it's moments like that that feel really exciting and satisfying. In what should be a very quick, very simple game, it can really go on for some time when you are battling it out. I think it's fantastic. I really do enjoy it. I think the ghost cats in Boop add a little bit more, but not necessarily needed. I'm looking forward to more different versions of Boop. I'm surprised there wasn't a Christmas one. Maybe there'll be a Valentine's Day or a summer one. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to play more Boop, to sort of really get into how those ghost cats change things up. But it's a really fun 2-player game. Next up for me, this one's been on the list for a few years now. It's Teotihuacan. Gorgeous game. We've got loads of it, loads of expansions and things. I haven't got that master set, which I would have loved, but I didn't quite go for it because I already have it, loads of it. But I really enjoy the way that you're going around, and are you deciding to build up that building with all those tiles and get those benefits? Are you gathering resources? Are you trying to get benefits by idolizing those gods? There's so much to do, and the way the economy works with those cocoa beans is really interesting in terms of what you've got to pay to go places, how much you're gaining when there's other players there. And there's just a lot to think about and a lot of different options to go down. Every time we've played, you kind of end up going down on a slightly different path and thinking, oh, actually I did really well with putting those little housey bits out last time, maybe I'll try that again. And then it doesn't really work out because you can't go there because of how much it's going to cost you with other people, where the
Yes.
other people are, and all of that kind of thing. And it just changes things up, or what tiles are available to be able to do some sort of upgrading and things. Do you have the resources to go in and start building up that temple? And so you do, whereas last time maybe you didn't, and everything's always changing, always different. And I mean, who doesn't love it when you're sort of building a big structure in the middle of the board? That's great. And I've got some really lovely resources for this one. So
yeah, you kind of got a very lavish production of this. So yeah, it makes sense that you wouldn't get the deluxe set, but no.
Also makes me a bit sad.
It does have such a great table presence.
Yeah.
And it's one of those games that work really well actually at 2, as well as bigger player count. So yeah, it's one I do enjoy when it reaches the table.
Yeah, I love this one.
Dune Imperium should be a game I like more. I'm not saying I dislike it. Obviously, it's in my top 30 games of all time. It's just everything about it I should love. It's very similar to another game where you are building decks and placing workers out. Yet this one just doesn't grab me as much, and I can't quite place my finger on why. I love the film. I love the art. I even love the combat that goes on in this. It just never really grabbed me as much as I think it should have done, which is a shame because I know it's a brilliant, brilliant game. Every time we play it, we go, that's fantastic. I really love this. But yeah, I would have thought this would have been in my top 10, but it isn't.
I think what it is that this one doesn't play as well at 2.
There is that.
Yeah, you can play it at 2, and it has the facility to do that, but it is very much, you've got to remember to take that third player's action in between. And when we have played it at 2, occasionally we've been like, did we do that?
Yeah.
Ooh,
it doesn't feel as integrated as lots of the other games that has a kind of stealth Ultima in there do.
I think that's what pulls it back, so we don't table it as much as a 2.
Yes.
So we play it at bigger numbers, but then obviously that means we're not playing it as often as we are some of the others that you might compare to higher up the list. I think that's probably what does it.
So yeah, I do enjoy doing Imperium. Someone says, do you want to play a game? I always say yes, absolutely, every time. It's just not one I necessarily reach for on the shelf. But that being said, it's still in my top 30, so still a very good board game.
It is indeed. I really enjoy that one. Next up for me is one of my favourite dungeon crawling experiences. Helped by the IP for sure. It's Star Wars Imperial Assault. I just have such great memories of this. We ended up playing it during lockdown, so we were doing it over video with people. We had a very kind friend who set everything up on his massive games table, had loads of cameras set up so we could see the board. He'd send us video files of our updated cards and everything so we could print off at home and have everything there. And I had a really great Wookiee. And he was a beast, and super great with his fancy weapon that I'd managed to upgrade for him, and he would go into every battle guns blazing as a Wookiee would, and we beat down those troopers.
We did.
We really did.
We've got like a finely honed machine by the end of it. We were working together. We knew each other's strengths.
Yeah.
We kind of had our default moves. We knew we were going to do early doors, and when it came to a certain bit in a scenario, we go, okay, you're best at doing that, which is generally most of the stuff. I was actually I kind of evolved my character. I started off as kind of a sniper, but then evolved into...
You never were a sniper.
I was a terrible
You were
sniper.
supposed to be a sniper, but you were never. And I think that's what makes it good. We got the banter because you were doing it online, and we were teasing each other about each other's characters and who was going to do what. And well, you're just going to sulk at the back and do nothing. Then we'll do all the hard, heavy lifting, shall we? All of that kind of jokes and frivolities happened during this, which means that it sticks in the memory. It was such a fun time.
Yeah.
And some of the last games we did manage to all meet up in person, and we had those sort of epic finales, and you kind of see those big pieces come out on the board, and it's like, oh my gosh. And they were wow factor over video when they kind of take up the whole screen, but then in person as well, and by that time we'd all really honed our characters, as you were saying. So the experience, the fun, the story of it, I think we did because why not? We did more missions than we were ever supposed to do.
It's much like we just didn't want it to end, and that's what a great testament to a fantastic game that is. Where you just want more of it and more of it. I'd love to play it again. I'd love to have that experience again.
Yeah, and it's been a few years now since we did play it, but because of the fun that we had with it and the group that we were playing with that brought everything to life, it does stay in the memory and it stays this high on the list, having not played it in a long time. And I think that nostalgia does count for a lot with a lot of my choices. It's the experiences and the memories of the game that's kind of makes me remember it fondly.
Yeah, great. You've already talked about Banner Festival. I'm going in for Tidal Blade's Heroes of the Reef. Such a great worker placement, essentially, but with lots of mechanisms going on and variables around the board that you kind of have to, that really do factor in where you're going to place your workers. Normally you have this kind of games, you have a need. I need to get that stuff. But with so much changing from turn to turn in Tidal Blades, often what you need isn't the ideal place to go because the judge has gone to a certain place, and if you go there, you're going to get more points from doing a certain thing.
Yeah.
The people attacking the reef will have changed, and suddenly they lend themselves to being something you're really good at. So if you go there, that's a point bounty right there. It's beautiful art.
It really is.
It's a fantastic kind of narrative, a fantastic scene setting that goes on with this game. Like an immersion in a great story that is just beginning because we know there's more chapters to come for Tidal Blades. And there's
super excited.
So yeah, it's a worker placement game at its core, but so much more goes on around that just elevates it over so many other of those kind of games. Again, a genre I absolutely love. They're one of my favorite genres. But yeah, it's a big hit every time we play it. Such a great table present, especially when you have that deluxe version that comes out and you have the arena there for your dice tray and you have your miniatures there on the table.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a shame we didn't get that edition. And,
it is.
But yes, we always love to play that Tidal Blades Heroes of the Reef.
Yeah, I will discuss that more, but I do enjoy, honing up my little dials, and I always fondly remember when we tried to attack the creatures on the reef, having done no training.
Yeah, it's not a good idea.
Really well in one of our first games.
Really not the best plan. You want to go there when you're strong.
Yeah, but it makes me giggle every time now. That I just every time we think of that game, I think, oh, better train up. The next up for me is also beautiful art. It's Flamecraft, and those dragons are gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And it's a game you previously mentioned.
We've talked about this.
So I won't sort of go on about it too much, but you are visiting the little shops, the bakery and the butchers and all of these things, and they've all got those fun, quirky names that are just sort of slightly a twist on them, which I really appreciate all of them. And you might be kind of taking some bits from them. You're trying to complete the missions in the middle, and as you were saying before, you're not doing anything nasty to another opponent. You're kind of upgrading shops so the next person that go there are going to get another benefit. You might be putting new shops out. Great, another place to go. And yes, you might take somebody's spot that they were kind of definitely looking towards, or a mission that they were hoping to complete, and just had everything there ready to be able to do it. But there's always going to be another option for them to be able to do. You're never kind of, completely blocking someone out of everything.
It's a nice kind of point salad, whatever you do, it's going to benefit you. It's probably going to benefit other people. If the shop's full up, you go there, just having to hand out stuff to people who are already there. So it's just, it's a very friendly, nice game.
Yeah, I really like all of this different art in the dragons, even though you can colour code them in terms of, or type coded in terms of whether they're meat or bread or whatever, as to what they're going to do for you. So it's easy to remember what does what, but then they're still all individual. I really like that. And it's a relaxing game. It feels like an easy to table kind of chilled, relaxed, don't have to kind of overthink it. Whatever I do is going to be a good move. It might not be optimal, but it's great. Yeah, I'm having fun. Really, really enjoy Flamecraft. I'd love to see more from that universe.
Great Wall really is a game of two halves. You spend the first time building up your army, and then you have to go and fight the barbarian hordes that are trying to knock down your new Great Wall of China. And as long as you get involved in that battle, that's good. It's just when you don't get involved that you bring shame on your family. But I love the idea that it's another worker placement. We can see a theme emerging here. But it's a worker placement where the rewards only come when everyone's gone to a certain space. So unlike other worker placements, you're going, oh, why have you gone there? It's evolved into, please come here.
Yes.
Because I need to get the stuff so I can do this other stuff. It's a deep game because there's lots of strategy involved, marrying up your abilities against your goals, against what you can actually acquire. And the best successful players in this will marry up all three simultaneously and just have this barrage of points building and building and building from doing similar actions in succession.
Yeah, and you had a great game based on archery once, and you just managed to get your clan power, some of your extra workers that you brought in, some other bits and bobs, all kind of synced together to make this great engine that was working, driving you the points.
And it's nice
bringing honour and respect to your clan.
It's nice it's a Awaken Realms game that is more Euro-y, because often these are very thematic and tell fantastic stories, but this is actually just a very, very high-end Euro game at its very core. And even the combat itself that goes on there is based on strategy and tactics. It's not just I'm there, I'm going to attack that guy. It's I'm there and I need to attack that guy because then you are going to be able to attack those guys and we can collectively defeat this horde and not lose bits of our wall. And I find it fun that it's that kind of semi-cooperative, goal-driven tactical game. We have obviously the fancy version with all the lovely Sundrop miniatures. We have every expansion for it, and it's a game we do table a fair amount. It's a game that actually people ask to play, which is unusual for us because normally we're the ones suggesting, why don't we play this game? So when people come around and say, oh, can we play that, the Great Wall of China game? Gladly. It's always a good time playing that.
Yes.
So it's not my favourite Awaken Realms games. I've got more of those coming up, more particularly narrative-driven ones. But it's certainly a very, very good game.
Well, you'll find out if it's my favourite Awaken Realms game later on.
It was very high last year, so we'll see.
Yes. I'll stay quiet for now. So my number 25 with a huge hit when it released at Essen this year is The White Castle. And we really enjoy some of those other games from Shay and Ezra, the designers. They did the Red Cathedral and the Red Cathedral expansion. We really love adding that into that game. And this is kind of in the same series, The White Castle. Maybe there'll be some more. Who knows? That'd be lovely. This one's set in Japan, which we really engage with that sort of theme. Quite a lot of the games that we love are sort of Japanese art and things like that. But this has got so much going on. If it's a small box, you get 9 moves the whole game, 9 actions to take. And you just think, well, how am I going to achieve anything in this? And you've got gardeners that are giving you special actions. You've got like courtiers that are going up in your sort of main palace, trying to sort of infiltrate the palace. You've got the warriors out in the fields, and everything sort of combining to help each other score points. The gardeners are super key in terms of if you leave them on a bridge and there's still dice on the bridge by the end of that round, then you're going to be able to activate all these extra actions. So you get those 9 moves, but you get a combo. You get to do extra things when other things happen, which is great in this game. And managing how you do that and how you stay abreast with your opponent who's also trying to do that and not let them. You kind of think, okay, well, we'll take our own path to victory, but then you're looking at them thinking, oh my gosh, well, they've done that. Like, well, do I need to do that as well? How am I going to sort of measure up to what they're doing? I really like the idea of, you might want to take the high numbered die at the front of the bridge, which potentially you'll get some extra coin from, which obviously you can use later. Or do you take the lower one, which isn't as helpful, but then does give you a different kind of step up? So there's loads of different actions and things that kind of affect something else, do something else. And you're building up on your board also this action with the cards that get taken, and it gets more and more powerful as you go along. So at the beginning, you're thinking, oh, well, that's not really gaining me much. It's not really worth doing that. But then as the cards come into your board and that row starts growing with action on action on action, when those kind of cascades of actions happen and that is kind of ignited, you can sort of somehow get this like bounty of stuff, and you're like, oh yeah, one up on here, that'll let me do this will let me do that, great, I'll send another warrior over there, and then if I move up another courtesan, then that's going to be another 10 points, and all of that mass is going on in just these 9 turns. It's got so much happening, and it's quick. I think half hour, 45 minutes for the two of us, depending on how crunchy it ends up being or what choices we have. It's quite quick to set up as well. Just absolutely love the crunch of a big euro in a small box that's quick to play, with a great theme.
Yeah, it's a game I really love. We talked about in an earlier video. So yeah, White Castle. Much like Dual Imperium, I'm surprised that this is so low. Bitoku is a game I would say I absolutely love.
Yeah, I am surprised by some that there seems to be a lot in this list that I keep saying, oh, you're gonna see that a little bit more later from me. I think I've said that of almost everyone. So
we play, obviously the majority of games we do play together. Yeah. So there's the assumption that our lists will be very similar, and all the games we both love are obviously on both of our lists. The amount we love them essentially varies depending on our personal taste, which is an intriguing way of looking at this.
And there has been quite a few that have made it into one of our lists, but hasn't quite made it into the other. Would have been in the sort of the bottom half of 100, which has kept things mixed up a bit. I was surprised at how much that happened this year, actually.
But I do love Bitoku. Obviously, that's the same about Flamecraft. This looks fantastic. It's almost like Spirited Away, the board game.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard it described as like a Lasada game with that beautiful art, and having played Bitoku so regularly, I now feel I'm ready to venture into the very, very heavy end of the board game spectrum. But with this, I love the threefold nature of it. You're playing an action card, getting that benefit and being able to upgrade a dice, and then placing that dice, and where you're placing on it, you have to weigh up all the variables. Are you going to place it in a certain area where there's buildings, hoping that your buildings, you're not actually helping out your opponent, or are you going to place the dice in a place that's going to block off an area that your opponent needs to get to? Ideally, you're going to place it where you're going to get a bonus you need and be able to go over the river and get more bonuses and more benefits from this dice movement across the board. And there's so many things that go on in Bitoku that, we've said this in the past, it doesn't feel like you make bad turns. It always feels rewarding, and there's so many different variables you need to weigh up. Are you going to go along the Path Enlightenment track? Are you going to collect the dragonflies and focus on that? Or are you just going to build up your Bitoku track and take that little miniature journey? What are you going to do with your little sleepy workers? Because you have a limited amount of those. So if you are going to focus on placing those on your Bitoku track, you're not going to be able to do as far a journey on the Enlightenment. Are you building up your yokai cards? There's so many different things you need to consider on each of those placements. And in fact, you're not actually making a great deal of decisions throughout the game because you only have 3 dice. You're playing for 4 years. So really, that's kind of 12 turns you're going to take. And you need to make every one of those count after weighing up those options. Obviously, this isn't going to lend itself to someone who overthinks things. You do have to play kind of instinctively, or this game could probably go on for some time. And I certainly wouldn't play at bigger player counts, because although it's fun to then have to compete for the spaces, I imagine the playtime would elongate significantly.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
But it's a wonderful world to be lost in, because everything in this game looks like a piece of art. All of your yokai cards, all your Bitoku cards, the board itself is magnificent. And while it might look overwhelming to start off with, really it's a central section you need to focus on, and then looking down the board to see what benefits you're going to get from those, and looking up the board to work out how you're going to go across the river. I do love playing this game, and like you were saying about other games, it does feel like an event when you play it, because you're sitting down, this is taking up the whole table, you're sitting there basking in its splendour, and just getting lost in a beautiful, beautiful world. I think Devere really knocks it out of the park with this one. They've done so many games recently, like Lacrimosa, that I really, really enjoyed. But this, I think, is the cherry on the cake for Devere games.
Yeah, and there's more coming from the saga this year, so that'll be exciting. Next up for me is a game that you've already mentioned, and I'm sort of a little bit surprised that it's higher on my list than yours, but I mean, yeah, who knows what I was doing with numbers, but I think I'm really keen to get this one back to the table again, because it's a fun, easy game for us to play. We've played it a lot at just 2, although I have played it at higher player counts as well, and that works quite well too, although I think I prefer it at 2, interestingly. And Red Rising's this sort of hand management, hand honing game where you are trying to, maximize the points that you can get from all of the cards that you get in your hand, and honing down which ones marry up with which, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, right, well, if that's the sort of maximum roughly you get per card, then I'll ditch that one. And you don't want to give anything too good away. You don't know what your opponent is looking for. Perhaps they're looking for a specific character, a specific color. So you don't want to hand them a bonus easily.
No.
But also you want to maximize what you can do at the same time. And all whilst doing this, you're collecting cubes for one thing, you're climbing up a track on another, and you've got to sync up getting to those end game points and managing when that happens. You've got the different faction abilities, so it just change up what your like sort of little extra power is during that, and you always have the option to sort of take a slightly different turn and take from the middle to try and sort of refresh what's happening. But it's a game I really enjoy. We've read the books, so can really engage in those characters that this is all based on, and it makes sense, the actions that they all do for their specific cards, for either their colour faction or for their character themselves and how they tend to behave. I think they did really well in terms of honing that towards everyone's specific kind of character traits. And just a really fun game, really easy to table, great production from Stonemaier as always. We have the sort of more deluxe version, which I know some people aren't that keen on the cube colours and things like that, but I mean, with some decent daylight lamps, I actually prefer the feel of them. They feel really lovely, so it can be hard in the dark light.
And the gold on the gold cards is much nicer. I think what you're saying about 2 players is right, because this game, obviously, once you discard a card, you have to place it on a board in a certain channel, basically, a certain reward, and then that covers up another card. And what happens with bigger player counts is you can see a card on the table, but it's buried so deep into people discarding cards, it suddenly becomes very hard to get it, and that makes it sometimes a little bit frustrating, where you've got a game-winning card that you just can't really get to. Whereas with 2, it feels much more, well, slightly much quicker to play, obviously. I can see why that's more appealing.
Although and I will mention again, as you said before, what I also like about this one is, say, for example, you're looking for a specific color, specific character in order to match up to gain points for one of your cards. There are alternatives in this game, so you can pick up another card which will often say, oh, well, this one card can act as any other character, or this one card can act as another color. And of course, you'll change it to that color. It won't act as both, but it really does help you in terms of trying to manage those achievements and what you can do with them, as to whether it's worth you keeping that instead and then sort of basically sacrificing what that would have done for you a little bit more. Is that worth it, or do you keep on the hunt for the one that you really wanted anyway? But it gives you options. It doesn't make you feel like when you've got a stack of cards on hunting for one, you never really are. You are, but you don't need to be.
Yes.
So you have options, which I really appreciate.
Will it be your highest Stonemaier game?
I don't think so, but I do very much enjoy it.
Obsession is a game I really, really love, and I'm surprised it was. I'm higher on my list than it is on your list. It's funny how these things have kind of worked out. But I love the theme of it. I find it just an interesting kind of social examination of a period in time I'm quite interested in. As you were saying, it does very much remind me of Sunday evenings watching period dramas I used to do as a child. And it's nice how it embraces that. It's interesting. It's obviously you're using photos of random people. Yeah, it gives you a backstory on each one, and then you're finding out that you've got these really mean-spirited old boy has somehow ended up visiting your estate, and you're spending your entire turns. Okay, is it going to be profitable for me to actually just evict him? And really, what you want to be doing is planning the village fate.
There's definitely a few cads in there.
Yes,
they're going to get you some money to start with, but they're just definitely not going to do you anything for your reputation.
And reputation is key in this game, as it is in so much. But yeah, you just want to put on a nice lunch on the lawn, and who are you going to invite? And have you got the right ladies' maids to be able to do that? And is that something that the Fairchilds want? Are they interested in that, or are they just obsessed with sports again? Or who's got the nicest estate? They're very fickle, those Fairchilds, because they from one season to the next they might entirely just change everything that they are about.
Yeah, sometimes they just want your pantry.
Sometimes trying to get in that pantry. And yeah, every time we play it, we as you said, we do the fun voices. We very much get involved in the theme because it's an unusual theme. It's that we often see, space marines. We see, orcs and fantasy settings. So having something that's just a bit different and stands out is always interesting to me. It looks like it's a complicated game. Really, it isn't. It's just a case of saving money to buy the bits you want, which are going to meet your individual goals, and also hopefully be what the Fairchilds want, while always reserving enough workers and the right people to be able to do an activity.
Yeah, and hoping the North Library or the Conservatory come out so that you can put them in your estate because you need them for the
On Curiosity Box. Never quite understand why that scores so many points. What's in that curious room? But yes, at the end of it, you have the big finale where it's National Day or something, and then you can have everyone come to your place. Doesn't matter if you're not, of enough prestige. You can still just have a great party.
Like the Builder's Holiday as well, where you get
buy
to
everything
get
from the market.
stuff. Yeah, hopefully you've hoarded enough money before that.
And I even love the gossip. How you can just gossip about the other team. They lose some reputation, you gain some reputation because some lady's maid is out there spreading vile rumours.
Yes.
Those touches just make it what it is, which is just an embracing of those, the books, a TV series, that stretch of random amount of history that we can never quite place when it's meant to be set. But it is part of what makes us British, I suppose. And it's great that that's been celebrated, the board game.
Next up for me is Blood Rage. The first thing I absolutely love about this game is that you get that drafting stage at the beginning with the cards, and you're just trying to hone in what you can do, wondering what other people have kept, what strategy they're trying to do. I mean, you pretty much always try the Loki strategy and just sort of die
try and lose to eventually try to win.
And you're going out, obviously, area control, trying to use different powers. You might have Thor's rage or something like that, different weapons and things, and you've got these different stages of the draft and then moving about on the thing, and I really love the Viking theme in this. I mean, some of those miniatures and things that you get in this game are, of course, amazing, and it's just a really fun game that not in our collection as yet, and I just keep teetering on getting it. I keep seeing it at a good price, thinking, and then I think, will we play it? Us too. A lot of other people own it. It's one of those. But yeah, I love a Viking theme. It's one of my favourite themes to play, and this one really puts you in the thick of it, the grit of it. And I think it's a lot of fun to play.
Yeah,
I didn't mention Chaos in the Old World, which I think is also quite a similar-ish game to play with a different theme. And I've only played that one once or twice, and it was a little while ago. And I've been talking recently with some of our friends about playing them both back on back to see which one I prefer. We haven't yet done that, so I can't really gauge that as yet. But I have had fun playing both, and hopefully we might do that experiment soon, and you'll hear more.
Yeah, of the kind of trilogy, the Unk, and Blood Rage trilogy. There's the other one I like
Rising Sun.
yeah, I love Rising Sun significantly more than the other two, but I do enjoy Blood Rage. I'm interested to play Chaos in the Old World because I
You
like to
haven't
see.
played
I've
that
never
one?
played it, no, so I like to see where it started to where it ended up.
Yeah.
Distilled was one of my favourite games of 2023, and I made a great friend in Dave Beck, so that was a bonus. It's a game obviously about distilling your favourite tipple of choice and all the process that goes on behind that in a very thematic way that I love how it echoes the actual distilling process and turns that into a game both thematically with really lovely art and both in terms of how the actual mechanisms, the play all work together. The highlight, of course, being that you're collecting enough sugars to add enough alcohol to your drink, and then you're removing the top card and the bottom card and hoping that those aren't the key ingredients you need to have to qualify to call it a certain drink.
Yes.
And as you're doing that, obviously you're competing for labels, which you can then get bonuses for, which will help you on future turns. Or you're making a decision of, are you going to start aging your drinks? Are you going to focus on a whiskey, for example, that then builds in flavours? And how long can you sustain yourself to keep on building that and going for the big, big points by having a very beautifully aged whiskey and hoping that the flavours themselves are going to come out essentially nice and not just a load of smelly sock garbage. There's so many variability you can have with this game. You have different tasting flights, you have different actually nationalities and different player characteristics. So it's interesting that each game will then play differently. And the combination of drinks will mean having to buy for the market in a very different way and looking at, are you going to focus on instead trying to get your player goals, your individual goals, and focus on choosing things to market that's going to pay off towards those at the end. So there's lots of decisions that have to be made as you're playing this. And I always love the theatre of it.
Yeah.
It says in the instruction manuals this can kind of happen simultaneously, but I would completely ignore that because there's nothing more fun than discarding your cards and go, okay, I was going to make brandy, but somehow I've made moonshine again. Love those moments. So I can see why I liked it so much last year, and I'm looking forward to tabling it a lot this year.
Yeah, it's one I already had on the list earlier. I really enjoy that one too. So next up on my list is one just behind me there, and in the box is a Lazy Susan.
It's what all board games need. Why is there not more Lazy Susans in board games?
I mean, this was brilliant. You get to swivel it round and decide what section you're kind of pulling off. And there's a sort of a slightly bigger piece at the bottom or a smaller piece you can choose to be placing on your map. And then obviously your opponents have to choose from the one that then is in front of them. So you can do that quite strategically, or just, obviously for your own benefit. But you're placing these polyominoes, you're putting them out on your little world that's there. And you're getting to move your rovers and bump up all of these different tracks. So it's just so much more than most polyomino games where you're just sort of placing out, trying to get ideal things and play things like Barron Park that we absolutely love that hasn't made it to this list. You're still getting to sort of cover up things, gain benefits in the same way, but there's a lot of benefits to get. There's a lot of tracks to move up. There's a lot of special abilities to work into. There's a lot going on in this game for a polyomino game. It seems like it's polyomino plus. Not just for the Lazy Susan. And I love the theme of it. It's one that just really, really enjoy. And it's not, I say there's a lot going on, but it still feels like crunchy but relaxy gamey at the same time. So you kind of feel like you're sitting down and you can sort of chill vibe whilst playing this, but it's still giving you some bites and decisions, some things to bump up. So yeah, really loving that one and can't wait to table it more and more and more. And I think there's more coming for it.
Oh, I think it's impressive that it works with slight wall tweaks, both at bigger player counts and also at 2 players when it becomes really, those mind games kicking. We talked about that in other videos. Working out what your opponent needs and stopping them from having it by manipulating the Lazy Susan in certain ways. So I think that's intriguing. And as you're building up your planet, there's variable planets you can work with, and do you get the comments? Do you go for just moving the row around, and which bits of the track are you going to do those kind of chain benefits for, and go up on multiple tracks? That's when it really starts getting exciting.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them that you're going up on one and it's letting you then move on another track. So how you make that decision is quite interesting.
It seems I've fallen out of love with the Pandemic series.
Oh, I mean, have you fallen out of love at this number?
Well, it's still obviously
dropped.
It's still very, very high, but it was much, much higher before. And I don't know if that's kind of pandemic fatigue, because I've played this game, I think, apart from certain other animal-based games, I've played this game more than I think any others, particularly if you include all the legacy games. I've played this a lot on the app. I've played it in person a great deal. I've played it multiple player accounts. Obviously, I finished Pandemic 1, I finished Pandemic 2, we got halfway through Pandemic 0.
Yeah.
Maybe I just know it too well. It could be that I've just overplayed it, really. Or it could obviously be the theme. That does sour it slightly, and it makes it very hard to kind of suggest to people who don't know what the game is. Shall we play a game called Pandemic? No, I don't want to play anything like that. Why would I want to play that game?
Instead, you play the Clone Wars, right?
And that's where it's really great. That's my kind of go-to pandemic game. Star Wars The Clone Wars is quicker to set up, more thematic, has a better table presence, and it's a theme that we love.
Yeah.
So, yes, now
if it does feel fresher, which is probably because slightly overplayed, as you say.
There's lots more that kind of
brought a new life to it.
There's more mechanisms, I think, in the Clone Wars, where you are having to achieve certain objectives before you can then go and fight the big boss. I do love that. Has lovely miniatures, and has those little droids that go out on the board rather than just cubes. And I'm not going to dispute the fact that I did absolutely adore playing, particularly Pandemic Legacy 1. Some of my favourite moments in board gaming came from going through that campaign.
Yeah, I think that helped bring you into the hobby.
It certainly did,
those shocks and reveals and stuff that happened in that, which you weren't expecting, having not played a lot of board games before.
And I'm not taking away from that. I'm not saying that those moments weren't special and amazing. They were. It's just I just can't see myself reaching for Pandemic anytime soon, apart from Star Wars The Clone Wars. So this is more Star Wars The Clone Wars.
So my 21, the last on the list today from me, is Sleeping Gods. Now, we had such a great adventure of the seas in this game, and it felt to you like a little bit like some of the video games that you might play. You're going to these different places, trying to work out where that means that you should go next. Should you let someone on board and help you as a crew? Should you not? Because they might do bad things, make bad decisions later on. Where are you going to find these different objectives? And you're going around and exploring. The whole world is beautiful. And I quite enjoyed the way the sort of actions work and the fatigue, and you're kind of going to different areas in the ship to try to be able to kind of revive yourself and do different things. And some of those options and choices you have when the events come up. Oh, there's rats on board. Now everyone's lost this amount of stuff. And oh, you're trying to start a fight. Do you want to run away? Do you want to get in the thick of it and attack them? What do you want to do? Every turn, every twist has a choice, has an option, has new places to go, places to remember, which we weren't so great
so good
at. We
the
need
cartography.
to be better at the cartography, especially if we get into distant skies at some point. We've learned some lessons there, but just exploring that world was such a lovely experience, and the tales to be told there. And there's so much more for us still to explore. I feel like we've done a quarter of the map, and we could go in all sorts of directions and find so many new characters, so many new choices, and see what happens. So there's a lot for that game to give.
I'm not going to say much more about it.
Wonder why.
So last off today, my 21 is Frost / Gloom / Jaws the Lion Haven. You've already talked about this, but it's still quite high on my list. It has dropped a little bit from last year. I think that's because we took a bit of a gap from playing it. But now we are getting back into the swing of it. And Frosthaven is everything that Gloomhaven was with extra bits. You know, I love the bit after you've done the fun adventure part where you're actually just building up Frosthaven. I find that quite an interesting puzzle that we have to kind of collectively decide on. And
yeah, are we building a new wall? Are we getting out a little house shelter? What's going on there?
And that's when the city events obviously kick in, and you have the journey events as well now. But obviously the core game of it is still great. It's still very clever mechanisms that go on in this game. You know, you've talked about the benefits of, you know, the top and the bottom and how those cards work in so many interesting ways.
Yeah.
The combinations you can do, and whether you're just going to use them as a basic action to avoid having to discard them, and how that also counts essentially towards your stamina, and how if you burn through your cards, you might have a flurry of success at the beginning, but you're then going to be kind of useless for the majority of the mission.
Yeah, especially if the mission, it needs you all to be alive by the end.
Yes.
You know.
Then you're the figure of hatred when you're like, oh, kind of nodded off back here. The games like this survive on the strength of the story, and this has only just begun, but already we're kind of getting interesting story threads going on as we, work up which people we're going to side with, who are goodies to our group, who are baddies. And then something we haven't seen when we were playing Draws a Line, obviously retiring your character and adopting a new one when you feel you've mastered them. And I found the starting characters, particularly for Frosthaven, are much more interesting than the other characters we played of. I'm working through a Bannersphere at the moment, and I find the puzzle that you get from playing with her and having to manipulate things around you really intriguing, and not something that I'd experienced was playing as Hatchet through Draws a Line, which is just how can I chuck my axe and get it back again as quickly as possible. But they're celebrated for a reason. They're fantastic dungeon crawlers that work elegantly, of beautiful systems that work together to make it potentially almost effortless as you play there. There's no case of having to check back through narrative books to find out what happens. There's no tables to compare things against. All of the combat itself feels controlled by the drawing of cards and by you're getting your benefits, and largely, okay, well, this is going to probably be good because I've rigged my deck in a certain way. So yes, Frosthaven at the moment has sunk a little bit, but I'm expecting it as we work through the campaign. I see all the beauty and the splendor of that to come out for this to rise up again next year.
Same here.
So that's been 30 down to 21.
Yes, getting into the good stuff now, aren't we?
So yeah, if you know our tasting games, you can probably predict what the top 20 are going to be, but where they're going to be on there, who's to say?
Any surprises, any new ones leapt in there from this year's plays?
Yeah, because obviously when we fall in love with a new game, it means there's going to have to be some shifts.
Yeah, exactly.
And some movement going on there. But what games have you really fallen in love with recently, or what do you think of our top 50 so far? Do let us know in the comments down below and join in the discussion.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you, and as I said at the beginning, if you haven't already subscribed, we would really appreciate it if you would do that. And of course, if you'd like to hear more of these, we've got 2 more videos to come for our top 50, so don't forget to ring the bell so you won't miss those.
But as always, thanks so much for watching.
Bye.